Good afternoon and welcome to the regular briefing session of the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners. We have a fairly long briefing and a lot of interesting ideas and interesting subjects to talk about today, and we are all present and accounted for. This briefing today is for the 17th of February, which is 3 days after Valentine's Day. Turn the meeting over now to our Vice Chairman, Don Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Guess I'll turn on my speakers. Congratulations. Thank you. This is our, as the chairman's indicated, our second briefing. And before we begin actually do the briefing part, we do have three quick discussion updates. And the first one is our weekly Joshua Swift update from COVID-19. He must be on, he's online. There we go.
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioners. I'll pull up my slides real quickly. This will be a brief update. I hope you can hear me okay and see my slides as well. So just for today, February the 10th, 2022, we reported 275 new cases. We are, though, seeing a decrease in the number of cases. You can see that our average caseload now is 344. That's over the last 14 days. 720 deaths total. You can see that our percent positivity, while still high at 26.6% for the 8th, is much lower than it was several weeks ago. And our vaccinations have went up, and you can see that 71% of our adults are now fully vaccinated, and 76% have at least one dose. So again, what I'm going to do today is change it up a little bit, show you some of where we are now, where we came from, and then some this encouraging news. So a little bit of just the facts of where we come from, what we saw last fall as we left Delta, but then we surged into Omicron. You can see our cases were October and November, and then how they stayed the same. Then they increased drastically in December, and then we saw that huge uptick in January. We saw a dip in our deaths from October to November. And then, some of that October was really left over from the severe surge that we saw with Delta, how severe that was and that death rate. But then you can see November to December, there was an increase, and from December to January. We are still seeing, obviously, deaths as we've seen throughout, but I do feel good that as we come through February and now get through this last part of February into March, that I believe we'll see that coming down. That's just what we've seen in other jurisdictions where your cases peak, then they plateau, and then they go down, followed by hospitalizations, peak, plateau, and go down, and then deaths are the lagging indicator, which they peak later, plateau later, and then start going down. So so this next slide shows some of that where we've seen those cases go down. Now 67% over the last 14 days. So we're in that fall of cases. The deaths, although it has increased 10%, this is not where we were several weeks ago, where we were seeing doubling of our number of deaths. So the deaths seem to be leveling off from COVID-19. Our hospitalization numbers, you can see from Atrium Wake Forest Baptist, you can see there's 181 in their system. That's down from last week when it was 236. Same for Novant, 159 in the Triad, down from 192 last week. So all moving in a better direction. Cases per week, we had 1,996 cases the week of January 30th, a far cry from where we were a few weeks ago at the surge of Omicron when we had over 8,000. Put this into perspective, these are still high numbers, but nowhere near where we were over the past month to 6 weeks. So thankfully that is moving in a positive direction. Percent positivity, we were 23% the week of the 30th, reached that high of 41%. We're not near where we were in the Delta range when we were at 14%, but thankfully we're moving in a proper direction and hopefully to see this continue to fall and get closer and closer to our ideal, which is 5% or at least under 10 or 15%. Next slide, just a reminder that for Forsyth County, all the testing opportunities that are available for people that need that. We've been posting this, trying to share it throughout. So these opportunities are available. We should see, we know that the Bowman Gray site is supposed to stay open through the end of February. We're seeing, we have the Mako Medical site at Southeast Plaza, Haynes Mall Circle, and then Star Med's 2 sites at Galilee Missionary Baptist and Union Baptist. You can also get at-home test kits. You can go to covidtest.gov. And also remind people, last week we had an at-home test giveaway at the health department. That was last Saturday. There's no test giveaway this Saturday. Unfortunately, Winston-Salem Journal posted an article that there would be a at-home test giveaway this Saturday. That is not the case. That was last Saturday. It was very successful. Appreciate the public health staff donating the Saturday to come out and be a part of that. I was there. I saw Miss McDaniel was there. Chantel Robinson was there helping, and we just had a great event. Lots of people came through. And as an update, we are partnering with Forsyth County Library to make test kits available at their branches starting next Monday. We know that they'll go quickly. And also we'll have at-home test kits available here at the health department on next Monday. So while supplies last, we'll have those at-home test kits available for the public. A press release should be coming out either later this afternoon or tomorrow morning. And stepping away from COVID, just an update, the Muddy Creek Water Advisory has been lifted. There have been labs with the Division of Water Quality, it's now called the Division of Water Resources through the state, also working with the North Carolina Occupational and Environmental Epidemiology Branch, which is through DHHS. So after their testing and thorough review from their toxicologist, they advised the Department of Public Health that it was best now to lift the water advisory along Muddy Creek, Monarchus Creek, and Mill Creeks. This is all post from the Weaver fertilizer plant. So again, be happy to take any questions regarding the water advisory or for the COVID update.
Questions for Joshua?
I do. Joshua, I received in the mail this week with my husband and I both 4 at-home kits. Are you hearing that lots of people are receiving those in the mail?
I haven't been hearing that, but that could be through obviously the federal government or also through different insurance providers. I know.
I think it's through the federal government. You can go online and order those, and I was just wondering if people are aware that they can order them, and the mail will bring them right to your door.
Yeah, you can go to that covidtest.gov and order those. Myself, we ordered some, and I would advise people to do that because when you need them, you need them. Mm-hmm. You don't want to wait several days. That's the whole point of the testing is to make it as quick and as accessible as possible. So thank you for sharing that, Commissioner Wisenhunt. We have lots of options.
Right. Thank you.
Just as a follow-up on Commissioner Wisenhunt's question, if folks have ordered online through the U.S. government and gotten their 4 kits, but they could still go by the health department or the library and get more.
Yes.
So there's not like some limit of how many at-home kits one could get.
Well, we do have limits with our events. Last week, the event, we had 4 per car. I don't have the specifics. I believe it's 2 tests per person if you come up at the library or at the health department. But obviously, if a person went to Walgreens and bought some, went to covidtest.gov and ordered some, came to our event and got some, that's perfectly fine if they want to. But again, I think it's important to have them accessible at home, but we're encouraging people to just get what they need.
Okay. Any other questions for Joshua? I have one quick one, Joshua. Just on the new subvariant that's out there. I assume we've not had any cases in Forsyth County yet?
Yeah, none that we know of, Commissioner Martin. And if I could say one thing else too, I know you're seeing a lot of information in the media in our northeastern states about how they're lifting mask mandates. One thing I would note, we have seen our cases go down quite a bit. But a lot of those states, the Omicron surge that we saw, they saw it 3 weeks before we did. So I do think in the next 2 to 3 to 4 weeks, we're going to continue to see this decline, hopefully, of cases that those places in the Northeast have seen. So we are, watching those numbers. You're hearing from out of the Biden administration and at the state and Raleigh that they are as well looking at those numbers and making recommendations. We'll make recommendations appropriately.
Thank you very much, Joshua. Again, appreciate all the health department staff volunteering on Saturdays to help promote the take-home, the testing kits at home. And always appreciate your reports. So thank you very much. All righty, our second discussion item is Minor Burnett, and he can be walking up from our Director of our Environmental Health here at the county. And he's going to give us a Weaver Fertilizer Plant air quality update. And by the way, I saw you on a local TV station on Zoom, I guess last week or earlier this week, and you did a great job and had pictures of the tested equipment out there. So appreciate your extra work during this sort of difficult time and challenging time.
Good afternoon, and thank you. For a lot of people, last week was a very long week, and I'll try to give you a quick overview of what that event, how that event impacted our air quality. So this is a list of chemical compounds that the facility had submitted on a Tier 2 report from 2019. As you can see, there are a lot of words on the screen that are things that you would expect to hear discussed in like a college chemistry class. Diesel fuel and 19 other chemicals were present on that site in significant quantities when that fire broke out last Monday evening. As you probably heard on the news, some of these compounds were present in quantities measured in hundreds of tons. So Tuesday morning, I got Paul Martin in our office, who is one of the best air quality modelers probably in the country. He knows people all across the nation. I go places and they recognize me as being affiliated with him, but I had him run this model early Tuesday morning to determine the anticipated area of impact based on the current meteorological conditions and what the air was doing, which way the wind was blowing at 8 o'clock Tuesday morning. And this turned out to be pretty accurate. For the majority of the day and into the night, on Tuesday, the wind was coming out of the northeast and pushing that massive smoke plume towards the southwest. So the area of impact was limited to a corridor in the downwind direction, and most of the rest of the county was still enjoying relatively normal air quality, clean air. But in that corridor illustrated on this slide, there was a very heavy impact and extremely high levels of particulate matter being measured. So late Tuesday afternoon, an 8-member EPA emergency response team arrived with some mobile air monitoring equipment, and they quickly identified some locations where they could get access to power and deploy these mobile monitoring, mobile monitors. So the purple diamonds show where they set up stationary monitors on Tuesday night. They got those operating by midnight. Site number 1 was on Wake Forest University's campus at the police station, right on the boundary of that 1-mile radius evacuation zone. Site number 2 was at the urgent care facility on North Point Boulevard. Site number 2 is North Hills Elementary School. Site number 3 was urgent care, and site number 4 was at Cook's Flea Market in the parking lot outside the 1-mile radius. So those monitors remained there until the evacuation radius was made smaller, and then they moved in closer to the fire. The yellow diamonds that you see on the screen with timestamps were from roving monitoring with handheld units, where they were moving around the area to see what they could determine in between the areas or outside the areas where the purple diamonds are showing the stationary monitors were located. So they got those operational by midnight Tuesday night. The first reporting period was through 6 a.m. Wednesday morning, and we got that report mid-morning Wednesday. So it was mid-morning on Wednesday before we had some quantitative data to consider regarding the impacts of this smoke plume in the downwind direction. So this is a part of a table from the EPA Standard Operating Guidelines for particulate matter monitoring for fires. And so at the top of this table, you have a description of good air quality. At the bottom, you have hazardous, and in between, you have the other categories. Those are based on numerical data or measured levels of particulate matter in the air. So at the bottom, that hazardous category is based on an 8-hour average exceeding 300 micrograms of particulates per cubic liter of air. And what was being measured in the beginning of this event was far in excess of that level. It was much higher than that level. And so from Monday night through sometime Wednesday evening, the concentration of particulate matter in that plume was in the hazardous range, and that's not my opinion, that's based on the EPA criteria. And then it started to clear up Wednesday evening. Through Friday morning, it was in the unhealthy range, and then by Friday morning going into the weekend, most of the day, Friday, Saturday, it was good air quality, which we would call code green in the air quality index. So on Wednesday afternoon or evening, they were able to use thermal imaging technology on a drone to verify that the temperature of the rail car that had about 94 tons of ammonium nitrate was not elevated. That rail car had not been significantly heated due to its proximity to the fire. I think they'd been putting water on it to keep it cool. So experts from across the nation agreed that it should be safe to open that rail car because the risk of explosion was diminished. When they opened the rail car, the product was not altered. It hadn't changed color. It hadn't changed composition. It was still in its normal granular state. Didn't appear to be affected by the heat from the fire for the last 2 days. And so they resumed fire suppression activities Wednesday evening, and I think that's one of the reasons we saw a rapid decline in air pollution levels being measured in the area affected by that plume. And please keep in mind that the area of impact continued to change during this event based on which direction the wind was blowing. And there was a time that plume looked similar to the hour hand on a clock, where it shifted from the southwest to the west to the northwest to the north, so that different areas were being affected at different times, and the people in those areas were being affected at different times. So I went by the site at 12:30 today, and there are a couple of small hot spots remaining with small quantities of smoke visibly rising from those spots. I would compare the volume of smoke that I saw this afternoon to similar to something like a campfire, which is really small compared to what we had earlier in the event. As Joshua mentioned, he issued an advisory, recreational advisory, due to the impacts on water quality in those 3 streams near and down gradient from the facility and the fire. And water sampling will continue until it's no longer needed and until they are reasonably confident that the pollution levels or the levels of these monitored or sampled analytes in the streams are returning to a normal background level. So thank you for this opportunity to share this overview with you. And like I said, it was a long week last week, and I was extremely impressed with the coordination of activities and communication among a lot of people that were involved locally and across the state. A lot of people stepped up to help us protect our community. And it made a big impression on me. And, you know, the best thing I can say about this in conclusion is no serious injuries, no fatalities.
Amen, brother. You know, I'm thinking as you talked, this was no just little tiny fire we had to pull out. In fact, it was so bad that even I got a telephone call from the governor's office. He had heard about it, and he was worried that half of the city could be blown away. I mean, it was that kind of a fire. And from my perspective anyway, we have a really fine, professional, heroic group of people who took part in every aspect of that fire and made it happen. Not the fire happened, just made it appear as though it was not a big deal as far as they were concerned. They could handle it. And I think, you correct me if I'm wrong, we didn't have to ask for out-of-state or any federal assistance while this was going on. And that's, to me, that's just a wonderful thing to be able to say. The other thing I'd like to know is, have you or any of your officials discovered what the exact cause of that fire was?
The Chief Mayo has indicated they have a reasonable idea, and I anticipate we will be hearing him share that relatively soon. He has not disclosed it yet.
It's a great report.
Thank you.
I had one question, please, Minor, before you leave. First, thank you for the report. On an ordinary day, when there's no fire, how do we measure air quality?
So, you know, we operate an ambient air pollution monitoring network at 3 locations in the county with samplers and analyzers that are running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And lately, we've had a lot of predominantly code green days where the air pollution levels for the pollutants we measure were low and healthy. We've had a few code yellow days, which are moderate level, which would only potentially impact the most sensitive members of the population with underlying health conditions like people that suffer from severe asthma conditions or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease or emphysema. They might feel it at that level, but most people would never notice it. We do put out an air quality forecast 365 days a year. You know, I have 4 meteorologists that take turns in a weekly rotation for that responsibility, so that even on weekends and holidays, we're publishing an air quality index. You can subscribe to it through the EnviroFlash feature that the EPA manages. And our air monitoring network is feeding data directly to the airnow.gov website in real time, so that anyone in America can go to that website and drill down into our monitors and see what the current readings are from our monitors. But we're constantly monitoring 4 of the 6 criteria pollutants as defined in the Clean Air Act. There are 2 that we don't need to monitor because they're not significant enough here to justify monitoring. We know they're always low. And anytime we anticipate conditions approaching that will result in unhealthy levels of air pollution in the community, we put out these air alerts, air quality alerts, to notify people, to make them aware that we anticipate levels will be increasing. But we haven't had to do that very many times the last couple of years because our air continues to get cleaner. So we are fully in attainment with all of the national ambient air quality standards for criteria pollutants, and in fact, the whole state of North Carolina is too. So that's good. We couldn't say that, 10 or 15 years ago.
I just want to commend you also, because I thought it was a prime example of city, county, and state working together to ensure the quality of life was not harmed in Forsyth County and the city of Winston-Salem. So thank you very much, Minor.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Minor? Just want to add my thanks to Minor, and by the way, thanks for your non-technical explanation. And also, it's really another credit to your department. We have basically a national expert here in modeling of air quality impacts kind of issue. That was, I think I remember seeing that exact picture slide in the newspaper. So thank you very much for the work that you do 24/7, as well as the response in this emergency.
Thank you.
Our third report today is from Mark Davidson, our airport director. He's going to give an airport construction update on kind of where we are with all the projects out there.
And I'm struggling to find it listed here.
You have nothing to fear. Here comes Ashley Sloop.
Worked on this before.
She knows what she's doing.
While she's finding it, I just want to say thank you. Your connections with our local legislators, we hit big. And we were able to secure, if you didn't hear the news, for anybody watching, $23 million in funding for Smith Reynolds Airport. So this is like a new pot of money. They actually gave it an acronym I heard today. I think it's capital, what do they call it? State Capital Infrastructure Fund, and they SIF. So I never heard of that before because it's brand new. And so we are working with the state to secure this money. And thank you all, because your connections with our local legislators, as well as a vision to hire Ashley Perkins, and thanks to Gordon and working all that out. Like I said, we got some money coming to us. So this morning we had a meeting with the state. Bobby Walston is the North Carolina Department of Aviation, Director of Aviation. And this is so new, this pot of money, that they didn't know how to handle it. It's not like your typical grant where you get reimbursed after you spend the money. The bill actually had a deadline of 100 days from when it was executed on November 18th to distribute some of the funds. If you count 100 days out, it's like February 26th, Saturday. And so we had this meeting this morning, and I wanted to get Terry's group finance on the call, as well as budget management, because I didn't want any of our procurement or bureaucracy or anything like that, any of our rules to interfere with us getting this money. And so they were on the line, and we're going to try to do everything we can to meet the deadline. But to give you some of those dates, they want to, my next Tuesday, I'm supposed to sign a document outlining where we want to spend the money, a conflict of interest statement, as well as a statement from Terry that we don't have any outstanding tax debt. And then the following Friday, sign the agreement, and then the 21st, they would sign the agreement, and then on the 25th, they want to give us 50% of the $11.5 million. The $23 million that was given or outlined for us to accept, they want to distribute 58% of it by the 25th of this month, and then the remaining 50% by June 30th. We are one of the few airports where it's actually in 2 years, this fiscal year for the state as well as next fiscal year. So we're getting $11.5 million this fiscal year and $11.5 next fiscal year. And to give you an idea, I like to measure against other airports. There were 18 airports that received funds under this new funding mechanism. We came in second. Jacksonville, the airport in Jacksonville, North Carolina, they were awarded $29 million. We were awarded $23 million. Other airports in the area, PTI was awarded $10 million. Statesville, $500,000. Some airports like Estonia were awarded $250,000. So once again, thank you. We hit big. And so I'm hoping we can meet some of these deadlines the state has outlined for that $127 million that they're trying to distribute across the state. So where do we spend this money? Dudley said it'd be a good idea to come to the board and say, hey, this is what I propose that we spend it. And Commissioner Kaplan always wants me to show on a map where we're actually talking about. So all my slides have little red arrows about the projects. And so I thought the first thing we want to do is finish a couple projects we already started. And one of the first projects is, we went out for limited obligation bonds and we got those issued. And so we're coming a little short on a couple of projects, and that's the corporate hangar development, which is right near the terminal building. And if you remember this project, we're 100% leased out in our hangars. We don't have any hangar space. So this project involves tearing down some old buildings as well as an older hangar and building two new 20,000 square foot hangars Signature Flight Support is already committed to one of them. The other one, the county will lease out. It also includes some ramp improvements. And so, like I mentioned, we had limited obligation bonds issued at $7.7 million for this project. And what we're finding out is due to the location of the hangars, what we finally decided was what I showed on that earlier graph. One of them involves tearing down a building, the old PAX building, because there's some environmental issues with it. So we're going to build a hangar on top of that, as well as the other location. The FAA is telling us that we have to have it further back from the runway, the approaches on runway 15. So there's some additional issues, I don't want to say issues, but reasons why it's going above what we originally estimated. Plus the fire suppression that's required for a hangar this size, fire sprinkler system, as well as fireproofing, and then just the crazy cost of construction right now. If we had done this project a couple years ago, it would have been a lot lower, and I think James Anderson can speak to that fact. So in this, I have additional funding request of $2.5 million to get these things done. It might be a little bit slightly higher or lower. If you remember, the way we bid this project out was a design build, and so Shellco was the winning firm, and so they're getting the guaranteed maximum price back from their suppliers, and then we can lock in. And so James Anderson will be bringing that to you in the near future, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, so we can get that. And we think we can probably start building in May. So that's how close we are. They're 100% done with design, and so we can actually see some stuff happening out at the airport in regards to construction here in May. And then completion the first quarter this time next year. Okay, so another project we want to get done that we started, this is the terminal renovations, the terminal building. This building, as you know, was built in 1941. It's just
That was the beginning of World War II, am I right?
Exactly. I enjoy working in the building, but it is literally falling apart. The idea is to have some modern attributes, elevator, the facade of the exterior, demo an old air cargo building. We have a lot of water intrusion in the basement, and some other things that we need to get fixed. And we've, a couple months ago, I brought to you that we're going to have that new Marchetti in there. That'd be cool. So I included that picture in here. But what we're finding is that we're going to need some more funds to get this thing done. And Commissioner Kaplan called it right from the beginning. And some of those things I talked about, the water intrusion, building systems, what we're finding back as we peel the layers on an onion back is that the plumbing's in bad shape, the electrical's in bad shape, mechanical. James Anderson was telling me about shelf angles. I never even heard of this, but it's very dangerous. Bricks are possibly going to fall off the building. And then also the cost of construction now at this time is crazy expensive. So we need some more money to finish this. And so what we had with this project, this was a design bid build, and Walter Robb was the winning firm, and they were working with C Design out of Charlotte to design it. And when we started finding out all these additional expenses, we needed to stop it and come to the county commissioners and say, hey, do you want to do this in pieces, like a little bit here, 2 years from now, we'll have to come back and address this issue, or just go ahead and design it, go out on the street, see what it'll take to construct it. So that's the point we're at now. And James Anderson will be bringing you an item for the board to consider in this next cycle is whether to proceed. If you want to get it all done with the design. And the money that I'm talking about adding to this project doesn't necessarily mean that'll be the total project cost, because like Dudley was mentioning, I think with the courthouse, these are just estimates, and so it might be lower. But if we can get that done, construction could start in the first quarter this time next year, and then completion at the end of next year. So that'd be great. As you know, we've had 7.1 earmarked for this under the limited obligation bonds, and a crazy $5 million looks like what the total, or add to that would be the cost. But we can also do some other things with some alternate bid options. So, and if you're going to get technical questions, I'm going to get James up here to help me. Watch my back. So another item, so that's 2 projects. We're almost done here for spending this $23 million. Another project I think is very important out at the airport is security access. Our current system at the airport, each gate you go to is on a standalone system. It requires either a number it's not, you know, access wide with there's no network or anything at the airport for a lot of our automatic gates and pedestrian gates and things like that. So what I like to do, what the staff would like to do is implement, the county already has a system called Access It, have a centralized access control for all the automatic gates and all the points, have some fiber optics run, some copper cables run across the airfield, get better surveillance in regards to cameras. And so I'm asking for $350,000 for this. And it really goes a long way with our tenants. We've had some issues, and so this would be good. All right, south ramp expansion. This is the older PowerPoint. So that's cool. I can talk about it still. This was revised yesterday. Dudley and I were talking about it. There's two areas on the airport that are remaining that we can develop. One of them is on the south ramp where most of you went to the Forsyth Tech grand opening, and there's some county-owned land over there by the agriculture building, the old impound lot. So that's where that red arrow is pointing at. And the other area is across the airfield, adjacent to runway 1533. When you're landing or when you're out there, that's 75 acres parcel. And so what we're looking at is just some money, $250,000 to look at feasibility, what kind of impact it would be to the neighbors, some preliminary designs, because this is land the county already owns, and it's the last developable land. And so we want to look into it, make sure we mitigate any risk and things like that. So on this slide, there's a couple. I had the city county planning look at some developments on that south ramp, as well as ABCON looking at some development, some different alternatives. That south ramp that's adjacent to the new Forsyth Tech would be perfect for some box hangars, for the electric vertical takeoff, or helicopters or smaller aircraft, as well as maybe relocating the flight school to that area. The other parcel, which let me see if I can find a slide that would show the airport, the entire airport. The other parcel is over here. If you can see my mouse moving around, is on the far side of the airport. We have about 75 acres, and we really need to know what would be the best use, highest use, because after that, there's no more land really developed at Smith Reynolds. So I wanted you all to consider that, $250,000 to look at both areas and sort of investigate what to do. Okay, so the best and last project, okay,
Mark,
in my opinion.
Before you go on, can you go back to the map? I was just trying to see how close it is to the residential areas.
Yeah, it's the northeast. This is where Airport Road is, Teresa Avenue, that side where Carver High School is. It's on that side. Right. There's this is only cut off of it. It runs the length of the runway.
So
and this
no
is the last developable space. So that's what I was talking about, was seeing what the impact would be to the neighborhood and see what would be the best development for this side of the airport.
Okay, yeah.
And I think the idea would be that since we're putting together our legislative goals at the state level, if we can do a little bit of work, understand what development costs might be, because that really is prime for the next ask to the General Assembly to try to get us some dollars to move those projects forward. And then the other one's obviously an access road around the airport, but that's sort of the thought process we're using to go into this year's legislative session.
Okay, thank you.
And so the last project I want to mention and propose is MRO hangar development. This is north of North State Aviation. I don't know if you can tell from my arrow there, right there at Lansing where it breaks off. And so I want to make sure we're on the same page. We received a letter from MRO Holdings. If you recall, MRO Holdings was the company that acquired North State Aviation. It happened a month before COVID hit, and it couldn't have happened at a better time, because I don't know the small company North State Aviation would have made it through COVID. But we worked with, if you remember, we worked with North State Aviation and MRO Holdings due to their network of customers. we were able to get American Airlines as well as United. Remember all those aircraft parked on the taxiways and runway? So they came to us with a letter and they said, hey, we're ready to grow. And this COVID has actually accelerated their growth. Man, need some water. Can I have some of that? So this is good news for the airport.
That water was purified by Forsyth County.
Okay. I'm better off now. So they came, like I said, COVID accelerated their growth. They not only have United, but American as well and other customers. And so they're coming to the county saying, hey, we're ready. If you could build something for us, we could lease it up tomorrow. So, and luckily we foresaw this happening, and that's why we got, some additional funding.
You just can't get enough of Forsyth County water.
It's good. If you recall, we had gotten some money through the STI, the Strategic Transportation Investment with the state, and we're building a big ramp, and you can see it there. Here's North State Aviation's hangar, and we're at the last stages here with the with design and is working on the environmental assessment, and that's a large hangar, and now we can start building hangars, MRO, maintenance, repair, and overhaul hangars along this ramp. So MRO Holdings is ready to go. They are the largest maintenance, repair, and overhaul company in America, North and South America. They have locations in El Salvador, Mexico. Actually, at my old airport, I used to manage Cecil Field in Jacksonville, Florida, as well as Smith Reynolds Airport. So they think that they can fill up that hangar that we can build. They actually think they could fill up in the next 5 years 6 new lines of business. And so when we start looking at what's remaining of the funds, we have $14.9 million. They hired a consultant to look at the current cost across the country right now is about $250 to $275 per square foot to build a corporate hangar. So, I mean, not corporate hangar, maintenance, repair, and overhaul hangar. So if you divide that into that 14.9 million, you're looking at a hangar 59,000 square feet. And so that would fill, we could get about 3 737s in that kind of space, as well as you need to think about shop and office space. So if we can get 3 lines, they were telling me that if they can get 2 heavy checks and a mod check, a modification of an aircraft, for each heavy check, you're looking at about 125 employees for each aircraft. So they think you can do 2 of those, and then on the mods would be about 75 employees. So you're around the 325 employees estimated jobs. And then also, they would be willing to lease it from the county for fair market value or a percentage of the construction cost. So it would be a big hit for the airport. We're at the point where we're sort of looking at different configurations of how the aircraft would fit in a hangar. And, we looked at a 767 in that upper right here, but it really doesn't serve what their lines of business are. They like to have that, but it just, the door hanger height and the depth and all that kind of stuff. So we're more looking at maybe 3 side by side or working at different angles. So just want to make sure I hit on everything I want to say. And the jobs, to give you an idea of the jobs, the pay range would range from about 40 to 60,000 annual per person. So it's a good to have. And also, we need to think also, not just for MRO Holdings, but when we design these hangars, it'll be county-owned, we'll lease it out. We need to think about the future as well. We can't just have it an annex to their existing operation. We'll need to put some office and bathrooms and shop space in there. So, down the line, if we need to lease it to someone else, we have the ability to do that. So, this last slide here, I think I've hit on everything. Sort of an estimate, a spending plan to get to that 23 million. Any money that's not spent, for the terminal building, I would say we'd want to put it in MRO hangar development, or if the corporate hangars come in a little bit higher, moving this money around a little bit. I think that the steps was for me to present just a big overview of the spending plan, and then we bring the CPOs to you, as well as James Anderson would bring each individual contract. So I know that's a lot to digest, and I've been rambling on here, but it's so exciting.
That's a terrific report. I'd kind of like to hear what one of your board members, Ted Kaplan, has to say about it, because he's been pushing this thing for, what's your impression? Hate to put you on the spot there, Ted.
Don't, it's fine. Mark and his team have really buckled down and gotten a lot done in this proposal, and it's going to be a new day for Smith Reynolds. And with the advanced work going on at PTI, there's lots of opportunity for new businesses to locate around here in aviation. So I encourage you to support what they're doing. It's going to be a great improvement to the terminal and to the facility, and of course, you know, the county owns it all. So, and it's this year, I think, made a little money, and next year it looks like we're going to try to do the same thing. So that helps retire the bonds and so forth, and then MRO is going to pay off whatever construction cost is for that facility. So things are moving, and jobs are opening up, parking lots are filling up. It's great.
21st century.
Just
Good.
one,
Other questions for Mark?
one comment, Mr. Vice Chair. First of all, thank you, Mark. This is good news. I hope that you involve the community also in this good news and organize some kind of outreach to them, just to excite their interest and to also talk about the job opportunities at that facility. Just congratulations.
Thank you. Will do.
Good. I got just a couple of comments and questions. First, thank you for the report. It was comprehensive, and actually I appreciate the detail to kind of begin to understand that. And I agree with Commissioner Kaplan. Clearly, a new day at our airport. But I do want to ask a little bit of. I understand that. I mean, the bidders are completely wide open in the terminal building, and you know, the prices. You know, the bids are going to be what they are. But I have a little more heartburn about the corporate hangar bid, because basically, you know, Shellco is going to give us a maximum, you know, price, I guess, and that's correct, right? That's what they're working on.
Yep.
They're talking to their suppliers, and it seems to me it's hard to get an objective maximum price that's really objective when they kind of know we're willing to put a lot more money into it. Kind of becomes sort of a blank check project for them, and that probably worries me a little bit. Maybe James would I see him getting up. That's probably got his attention.
Told you he's got my back.
Like to make a comment or two, because it seems like that discussion, when you've got essentially a single vendor is problematic at this point.
So what Shellco is doing, while they are a single negotiated contract with them for the design and the construction of it, they are bidding out every subcontractor package. So the building is being bid out. They're bidding out the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems. No different than if we were to do a hard bid project. And so they're pushing to try to keep this as close to that original budget as we can. Unfortunately, the way the construction market is right now, we're paying about double what a steel building would have cost us a year and a half ago. And that's been the main driver for really pushing that cost up. And then the other thing that's really hurting us too on this one is the fire code for hangars. Signature, they had hoped when they had developed their concept for it that we wouldn't have to do a sprinkled hangar. And meeting with our local code officials, unfortunately, we're going to have to do sprinklers and also fireproof the structure to meet the current code for the hangars. And that's also driving up the cost.
Yeah, Commissioner Martin, I was going to add to that, because I'm going to say this, and James, make sure that I'm accurate, but really the only difference between design build and CM at risk is design build is contractor led, and CM at risk is really design led. Is that fair to say? I mean, because you basically got your general contractor nesting the design work up under them, and so, but both of them have bid requirements. Is that
Correct.
okay?
But of course, Shellco is likely to use some of their own forces in this building. I mean,
But they're competitively bid, and we get to see it, so it's still got to meet all the bid requirements.
Yeah, but essentially, they haven't, the whole concept of the maximum, price issue, we don't have it yet, and we're already talking about what we're willing to increase it, but we know it's gonna be more. We know what the marketplace has done. It just strikes me that the guaranteed maximum price is kind of not a very meaningful number, when we're in this kind of, when we're talking about, well, we got it covered, or whatever. I mean, obviously, we could choose not to do some piece of it and whatever else, but do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, we talked about a budget, agreed what's going on, and then we're making this, the guaranteed maximum price is kind of meaningless number.
It's almost like insurance, I guess, is what, it's insurance for us, saying under no circumstances would we pay any more than that. But there are contingencies built in there for both us and for the contractor. And so, you hope you don't ever, things would have to go pretty bad to be at a guaranteed maximum price, right? I mean, it's really more insurance for us than it is anything to the builder.
What I was getting at is that there is almost an assurance to the contractor, and this to Shelco, that their guaranteed maximum price is going to be covered. In other words, we're going to stick with the project and do it. I mean, it's kind of like and if I'm them, I'm going to make sure it's covered. I mean, they're not taking any risk at all in this. I kind of have a hard time just determining the difference between simply outright bidding this project. This is one I appreciate contractor led, because we're not going to have a big design contract with an architect, and this is a pretty straightforward project. So, but I suspect that Jelco is getting a fee on top of this.
So
in addition to what the contracts are going to end up paying. I mean, that's the part that probably is bothering me a little bit.
So it's fee-based construction, so the contractor gets what we negotiate in his fee. That's what we're paying paying that. If the project goes haywire, we're still gonna pay that fee to them, and that's all they're gonna get. So their risk is really that the project goes haywire. We never pay, they don't get any more money other than that fee, right?
That's correct.
That's all they ever get is that fee. And so there are the private sector actually does some CM at risk in design build where anything left over the contractor gets, but we do not do that. So it is fee-based and the bids are the bids.
But they are going to be a bidder, is my whole point. And they're going to be they're not just getting their fee, they're also going to be a bidder, and a bidder makes money on his bid.
I don't think that's true. We don't allow forced labor.
You just said that they were going to be one of the bidders.
No,
I don't want to waste a lot of time.
No, so
I appreciate all the work. I'm in the weeds about it, but there's some just things that maybe I just need an offline conversation. I don't want to waste people's time anymore. So we can move on and continue this some other time.
Yeah, okay.
But I will just ask, you did say they are going to be a bidder.
No, they're not going to be a bidder. They're serving as the general contractor, so they're going to manage the project. But the concrete package, the steel package, all of that's going to be bid out to subcontractors.
None of their forces are working. None of their forces are part of it.
Just for management, for overseeing it, they
Okay,
might
all right.
have a
All
guy
right,
or two.
I feel better. That's good.
Very minor.
Probably should have started there. I apologize. Anyway, we're ready to go. So, Mr. County Manager, you take it away.
All right, great. Thank you, guys. Appreciate all that. And you can take the water with you, Mark. So. All right, so the only things we have really to finalize the agenda for next Thursday's meeting, we do have one item for closed session, and so we can go ahead and dive into the agenda. And what I thought I would do today is what I did last Thursday. Let's go ahead and take everything except the ARPA items. The ARPA items are items 4 through 24. We'll just take those last, and then Kyle's got a presentation on that. So I'll dive into it and jump around a little bit, so I apologize. Item 1 is approval of the minutes for the meeting of February 3rd, 2022. Those should be coming out pretty soon.
They've been sent out.
Sent out, okay. Thank you, Ashley. She's amazing. Item 2 is an amendment to the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget ordinance that appropriates unreserved fund balance to fund prior year outstanding encumbrances, the thing we have to do every year. And this year it has a Part B, which is an amendment to the emergency telephone system special revenue fund. It appropriates fund balance to fund a prior year outstanding encumbrance. Those were reviewed by Kyle. He's here if you got any questions. No questions. Okay, item 3 is an amendment to the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget ordinance. It appropriates some state unauthorized substances excise tax funds. Mark Elliott with Sheriff's Department reviewed that last Thursday. He's here if you have questions. That helps us get another canine in the ranks. Any questions? All right. We'll skip item 4 through 24. I'm going to dive all the way into item 25, which is a resolution authorizing execution of a one-year agreement with EMS Management and Consultants Incorporated. It provides the medical billing and collection services for Forsyth County Emergency Medical Services. Jennifer Collins reviewed that last Thursday. I believe she's on the line if you've got questions for her. Pretty straightforward. Okay, item 26 is a resolution awarding a contract to P&G Security Guard Incorporated for contracted private security services at the Forsyth County Law Enforcement Detention Center. Major Robert Whitaker reviewed that last Thursday. He's here if you got questions. All right. Item 27 is a resolution approving the purchase of computer equipment for the school nurse grant. The MIS, Gary Koontz with MIS reviewed that last Thursday. If you got any questions for Gary. All right, pretty straightforward. Items 28 and 29 are both property matters. Item 28 is a resolution authorizing the execution of a lease agreement between Forsyth County and North Carolina Baptist Hospital. That's the lease of the property located at 501 North Cleveland Avenue, where we lease the dental clinic and WIC offices from them. Questions? All right. Item 29 is a resolution authorizing publication of an offer to purchase county-owned real property by negotiated offer, advertisement, upset bid procedure. That's where we received an offer on the Robin Hood Road property. There were some questions, and Chelsea sent to Ashley, and Ashley sent out a response to that was pretty comprehensive. And I believe Chelsea's on the line if you've got any questions.
Well, yeah, I appreciated the report, and it was comprehensive, but I think $11,000 is a fairly low amount for that project.
It is, and our staff sort of metric we've used is if we receive a bid of 50% of value, we take it to the board. It will go through upset bid, but if you think we ought to, it's certainly possible to reject it and place a higher number on that particular property. It is. While it's an odd-shaped property, it's certainly in an area where I would expect it to get an upset bid.
Is it a vacant piece of property like wooded? Is it something that ground maintenance don't have to do anything to?
Chelsea, are you on the line? Oh. So used to everybody being virtual. I'm not used to real people. So.
I'd say she's doing what Johnny Cash does. She's walking the line.
That's right.
No, sir, we don't have to do anything to that property. There's no trash dumping or anything. We've been very fortunate.
Could you repeat that again?
I just said our grounds maintenance staff does not have to maintain that property at all. There's not been any trash dumping or nuisance notices or anything like that.
So you didn't have to do any demolition or anything?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
It's just vacant with trees.
Okay.
I guess my comment is simply that as a vacant piece of property, what the assessment that gets assigned to that as its value is probably way less than its real value as a 7/10 of an acre in that area of the county, 7/10 of an acre in a subdivision is a lot of money. This is not a subdivision, I understand that.
Yeah.
But it has great road access. I'm assuming it has water, sewer, and electric both, all three. I'm assuming, I didn't know about sewer. I don't know that sewer is immediately available, but we know electric and water is, but I'm not so sure about the sewer piece. I assume it is.
I have not looked into that to know.
I'm just looking at the value. I'm just looking at value in a development process.
I don't know whether you, my thought is this, a little bit along Commissioner Martin about if the value is 20,000, they're about a little bit more, I believe, and vacant piece, it's not improved. It's I haven't had a chance to get over there, but if we're not having to do maintenance on it, my thought is if you had to start over, I'd put a floor on it at 20,000 of what the value is and go from there. And if we didn't whatever come out of that, then make a decision for certain. That's my thought on it. And I'm
maybe-
just kind of, if the tax office puts a value on it, depends on what one is, I'm reluctant to offer to sell it for less. Not particularly this one. I know we've other things that we've have, but we're not. Well, I'm just not in favor of
This is a
taking
little,
anywhere close to what we've been offered to understand about the upset bid, I guess, or you can continue on. If we don't, if it don't go to 20,000, then we just no sell it. That's where I am on it.
yeah, this is a little unusual. A lot of times, the upkeep issue of a property really factors in. It's probably where the 50% came from. We have other incentives to go ahead and get the property back in circulation, owned by somebody and somebody taking care of it. It's always been surprising to me a little bit that the adjacent property owners weren't more interested in this property, but apparently they aren't. But maybe there will be if it showed up at upset bid. I don't know. We'll be glad. I asked our county attorney. I said, could the board at this point just say, we appreciate you bidding this. The number for us to move forward is going to be $15,000 or $20,000. So if you want us to go ahead and communicate that back to the offerer, we can certainly do that. Accept it at a higher number, and see if he's interested. The property has been out there. It's on our website. It's not a banner on the front of the website, but it's there, and we have, we put all that county property there so people can see it and bid on it, whether it's foreclosure property or whether it's these surplus properties like this. Again, in the past, we've sort of used a uniform measure to take it to the board, and once we got a bid at 50%, we did. But I guess my suggestion, maybe think a little bit about it. If you want us on Thursday, we can table it, or we can communicate back to the offer that for us to move forward with upset bid, the number's going to have to be higher.
I'd propose to just communicate back with whoever made the offer on it, and tax value is the floor on it, and go from there. They don't want to.
Okay.
Whatever if the process needed to change after that.
Why don't we have an option B that we put in there next Thursday that basically accepts it at tax value.
And during the upset bid, there's still be an upset bid.
Mm-hmm.
And in the upset bid process, I think we ought to put a sign on the property that said, this is for sale. People do drive by that. I mean, that's a pretty busy road on Robin Hood there. And I think putting a sign on it and saying for sale or whatever it gets, because we had a lot of this very discussion on the East Winston property and the upset bid there, and that we wanted to make sure it was advertised properly and people had an opportunity to a little different than just on our website. Mm-hmm. So that people could see that.
We can recycle our sign we used over at over there.
Exactly. I mean, something that gets a little more notice that this is for sale.
Okay. All right, we'll have an option B that takes us in that direction then. That sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chelsea. All righty. Reports, you've got the November, December Human Resources Report, and that is it for that part of the agenda. Let's go ahead and see if I can get Kyle to come up, and we'll go ahead and dive into a discussion about the ARPA funding item. So what we wanted to do is really put this kind of in context with our whole ARPA process, and as we know, we're going to be dealing with items related to the American Recovery Plan Act for years, and so we tried to kind of identify those sort of pertinent issues that are in front of us, kind of where we are right now. So we've got things that are going to be the agenda item, and then we also have things that we know are going to be pushed back to the next cycle and maybe even the next one. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kyle.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, and as the County Manager said, we went through a lot of these items in detail last week, but wanted to bring you an update on where we were in this process again. And so So the first thing we wanted to do today was really finalize the agenda coming up. And so as last week, we brought you some recommended items to get feedback from the board and incorporating that and talking to staff. You have the agenda items in front of you for voting this next week for the ones that we saw that we had majority board support for. So we'll go through those in just a moment here, but those will be the ones that will be voted on next week. Additionally, just an update on policies and procedures. The board moved forward with adopting a number of policies and procedures, and really there's only one that's outstanding. We are waiting for some more guidance from the School of Government on that. They're going to put out a template, but once we have that, we'll bring that to you for your approval as well. And then wanted to provide a quick update on a couple of applications. While we were going through this process, we broke these down into sub-initiatives, and one of those areas was educational attainment. Those applications, we met with the Winston and Forsyth County schools and ended up referring those applications to them for consideration for funding. We checked back in with them to see where they were on that and got an update. So they will be doing their own RFP process to solicit applications for funding and indicated that the applications we provided them would not be able to be used in that. They would communicate with the applicants about the opportunities for funding, and specifically they were going to focus on prioritized learning recovery, so summer opportunities, tutoring support, but we did want to provide that update to you that we had transferred those on. They won't be able to use those exact applications, but we'll alert them of their funding opportunities. And then additionally, Forsyth Tech, some of the workforce development ones as well, we met with Forsyth Tech and referred those to them for partnerships as well. They didn't have any funding at that time to fund those, but they said they would work with those organizations to see where there were opportunities to partner. And then lastly, the City of Winston-Salem, so they will be the City Council will be taking up an item in February to approve moving forward with an open application to the public, similar to what we did. It would be open only to nonprofits, and right now the intention, obviously pending council approval, that would open up in March, be open for about a month, and they would have a scoring matrix where they would score those and go through their process as well.
When you said February, you meant this year, right?
Yes, they'll be taking up that item this month, in February this year, and with the intent of opening up their application in March of this year.
And the issue on the projects that we sent to the school district, could we just take another look at those and kind of review those? Because some of them were a little, I mean, what the school district process is, as I read their email, what they're describing is nothing's going to take place for months before they do anything, and it's kind of a whole year in this cycle out if there were some promising projects, of which I think there are some that relate to some other projects we're funding, and I think it would make some sense to take a look at those.
Yes, sir, and we did not take any formal action on those items, and so we can review those and bring those back to the board as well. So looking at what is on the agenda for the February 17th meeting, and I broke this up into two categories, operational support and capital, just because, as we mentioned last week, those capital projects, we are approving moving them on to a additional phase of required review, and then they would come back to you if everything worked out with that for additional approval. But the operational ones, we would be able to move forward with as this is being the final approval and enter a contract. So we've got them listed here, the Forsyth County Department of Social Services Substance Abuse Navigator, Piedmont Triad Regional Development Corporation, Crosby Scholars, Collidium, Children's Law Center of North Carolina, Home Ed Ministries of North Carolina, Forsyth County for the bipolar ionization equipment, Financial Pathways of the Piedmont, Trail Supportive Care, and Legal Aid of North Carolina. We did cover all of these in detail last week. If there are any board member wants to talk about, I'm happy to discuss those.
Could you put that on a slideshow, by the way, so the actual slide would be a little bigger?
Oh, yes. Apologize.
Please. Thank you. Thank you.
And then continuing on with the operational ones, Shepherd Center of Winston-Salem, Tourism Development Authority, Family Services, Flywheel Foundation, Forsyth Tech, Forsyth County Community and Economic Development, and Downtown with Salem Partnership. So those will be on the agenda for a vote next week. Looking at the capital ones that will be on that agenda, YMCA of Northwest North Carolina, Family Services, Senior Services, and then Forsyth County Behavioral Health Campus Improvements. And we would intend to bring those back to you after that review.
May I ask a question about family services? So what was the initial acts? Were they cut, or is that their initial act?
That was their initial ask,
was,
as
okay,
I remember,
fair
yeah. The project is $1.5 million, but they were only asking for a portion of that.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you.
So looking at moving forward, so there were a number of items last week that we had some discussion about as a board, with the board, that we, after speaking with board members and incorporating the feedback we received last week, felt that there was a majority to move forward with. And so these are the items before you that we would intend on adding to the next agenda cycle. So briefing for the first time next week with a vote on March 3rd. And there were a couple of items here that we still wanted to pull out, really the first two. The Cure Violence Initiative, I know there has been discussion of that. I do believe there's still some guidance that we need on that. And I will turn it over to the Deputy County Manager, Chantel Robinson, for that.
Yeah. Can I jump in just a second? So I just want to make it clear that the reason why we've got these kind of in the next agenda cycle, one of the big reasons was really just there was a ton of work that had to go in to getting the agenda items in that ready. And so since we were still working through some details on these, we just have not had a chance to get these kind of finalized. But it wasn't anything necessarily about the projects that made us separate them. So I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. And good afternoon, Commissioners. So on Cure Violence, we believe we heard there's majority support to proceed, but staff needs direction on whether the city's participation is a requirement for us to proceed, if there is a certain funding level from the city that is a requirement to proceed. We are working with Dr. Butts of John Jay College to determine kind of what a pilot area would look like, what a comparison area would look like, and to assist us with an evaluation tool, and do have a meeting scheduled with him on Monday morning at 8:30 to try to get some guidance. But for us, we need direction on how to proceed, if there's support for the board, so that then we know what direction we need to go in.
So if I may ask, Chantel, I thought that the city was meeting about Cure Violence and there was a response back already.
So the city meets actually Monday evening is their Public Safety Committee meeting. From there, the committee, if they approve, would provide a recommendation to the full council the following week. So we really won't know, really by next week, I will at least know where the Public Safety Committee stands. By our next board meeting, I'll know where the Public Safety Committee stands. And at this point, we know there's $200,000 in the city set aside in ARPA funds for Cure Violence. However, there has been no, I guess, official vote now that the model and the assessment has taken place. So certainly it's not official until it's official.
Certainly, I understand that, and that's fair. I mean, our sheriff came to us last week about about working alongside the city, and we can't wait. Every week there's violence in our communities, and I'm unwilling to wait for them to make any decision. Now, we will wait until after that, but if they don't, we'll just go at it alone. So that's how I feel. Thank you.
I guess a comment I'd make, I do want to hear what the city does, because I think they should have some skin in this game, because it's important to them. The very initial grant, so forth, with the report that we had to a whole bunch of people in the library, was kind of co-led by you and your counterpart at the city. And it seems to me that this is something of importance to all of us, and that we ought to be in this together. This is one I think we really need to be in this together.
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to belabor this too long. Can you hear me clearly? I want to be very specific about this. This whole Cure Violence process is going to funnel through JCPC to some degree. in terms of oversight. That's a county function. I don't see the need to wait for the city to do anything. They stayed 4 months in this community. We've sort of procrastinated up to this point, so it's time for us to make a decision. And my decision is to approve the 1.5 million.
Okay, we appreciate that, and so we'll prepare an agenda item to put that on the.
Yeah, I think from a practical perspective, we'll know, we move forward with $1.5 million. We know, well, the project cost is $1.5 million. And so that's not going to change. If the city chooses to partner, chooses to fund, then we'll pull that back, and this board will have some dollars to reallocate to some other programs. So, and it looks like, the planets are lining up because our process through final approval, this should coincide pretty well with the city. So
You'll know when you need us.
there you go.
We'll know something next week.
We'll at least know their Public Safety Committee next week.
The next item that we wanted to just provide a brief update on, I know there was conversation about this last week, was the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office Juvenile Intervention and Investigation Team.
Yeah, and I'll ask Rocky or Randy or Mark or anybody else who's carrying a gun to come up and present to you. There's been a lot of work, I know, by the Sheriff's Department on this one, and they've revised it a bit. You've got a hard copy in front of you of a revised budget, and you're upside down, Rocky, but so we got to get you. Yeah, well, you got help behind you. Kyle's going to come in and save you. So anyway, I'll turn it over to Rocky.
I apologize I couldn't be here last week, but I do really appreciate the supportive words we had on all of our agenda items last week. We just wanted to come back and clarify a couple points that came from the meeting last week. One of the questions that I heard was that some folks want to know what Kernersville's participation was going to be, and Kernersville has stood by us since day one saying that they would participate on a limited basis. They're a fairly small agency, so it would be tough for them to commit a full-time guy, but they have had a representative at every meeting that we've had. That representative has helped us in any kind of special operations we have, and I think he'll be made available for any special operations, and they're willing to sign whatever type of agreement, interlocal such, that we're willing to, or that we come up with in the future. Another question I heard was if there was a way that we could maybe start out smaller and add to it as the years go. I've met with some of the budget guys, and I'm not too sure how that process works. And so what we've done is we looked at the proposal that we presented and to see what we thought maybe we could, how we could reduce it and still be effective as a team. And so the original request was for a sergeant, a corporal, 6 detectives, and an administrative assistant. And so what we did is we've reduced that to 1 corporal and 5 detectives. That would still be a 6-man team. It would still have a level of supervision. Before, when we had 2 supervisors, we were looking at a relief element, but with the cooperation that we've had with Winston PD so far in our makeshift unit, they do have a sergeant on their team. And so I believe that once this team is established, once we start working with Winston, we'll have that relief factor in there between their supervisor and the one that we're requesting. And so with the new altered or the new reduced application, that brings it from 3.8 originally to 1.776, and so that reduces it quite a bit over the 3 years, and that's probably a top number depending on when it starts and when the ARPA funds are no longer available. That number would only come down, and so that's what was presented to you with the reduced numbers. And so if you have any questions about that,
Rocky,
my team here will try to answer.
is this what you really want?
Is this, you talking about this reduced number?
Uh-huh.
Now, there's more work. There's plenty of work available for this, as much as we can get. We can still be effective with this number. What we basically did is took 1 worker bee out of this mix, where we're going to have 6 detectives before, we'll have 5, and where we have 2 supervisors before, we'll only have one, but if we start working with the city, I think once we have members to come up with an agreement, that the city will be glad to enter into a local agreement with us, and then we'll have 2 supervisors. We've already identified and set some space aside at the task force office to house both teams, and the officer that Kernersville gives us for the special ops and stuff is already housed in that building, and so we've already got a space for them. So we're really only reducing it by 3 people. And the other one is the administrative assistant, which we can take some of that administrative work and pass it on to some of the administrative staff that we have now. I didn't want to reduce it so far that it would hinder our efforts and then try to add to it next year, because like I said, I don't know how the funding works, if we have to ask for the money for all 3 years now, or whether we can, reapply next year for more funding. So what I try to do is just take out what I could to bring some of the costs down and to keep enough people to be effective, and hopefully with the partner with Winston and Kernersville, we'll still be able to go out and make a difference in these 3 years. And in my opinion, I know we will, and if it's very effective like we know it's going to be, at the end of year 3, we're going to be coming to you guys and say, hey, can we extend this funding? And at least with this reduced amount, it won't be that much of a ask. We won't be asking for 3.8 again. It'll just be a reduced ask. And as you can see there, if we continue on after year 3, the cost will be just somewhere around, probably getting up close to $600,000 a year for that point. And so reducing it will make it easier for us guys to ask you guys to continue it after the ARPA funds go away. And then at that point, if we think we need more, we can always ask you guys each year at our budget request to add people to that team.
Well, this is the one project that I have been very excited about. I'm sorry to see that you reduced it, because I think it needs to be fully funded as quickly as possible. And Forsyth County Sheriff's Department is in the schools, and that's what a county is supposed to do. And this is some money that I think could bring a lot of relief to parents. I know parents are just very concerned right now with gangs that's in the school and the problems that teachers are having. I think your full funding is very much needed, and that's what I would support. I'm sorry that you reduced it, because I think it's fully funded is what's needed.
Well, I appreciate your support. And by reducing the number by 3 people, it didn't hurt us procedurally a whole lot, but it took some of the upfront cost of the additional vehicles and equipment, stuff like that. So that's what knocked some of the price down. So we're still going to have a pretty good operational team that I think can still make an impact on what we're trying to do out here.
Well, why don't we leave it where you put it and see how that vote comes out?
Hey,
I mean, we only have.
I am never going to turn down anything you guys.
I mean,
if you
that's
guys
what
want to go up,
that's
I'm
what
here
we've
to
talked
receive.
about for so long, and I hate to see it change right before a vote. So I'd like to vote on the whole thing before we start talking about cutting down.
And Rock, I had just one question, Mr. Chairman. If we fund it fully, as Commissioner Wilson had, suggests, in that 4th year, when you come back to us, will it still be an ask of $600,000? Would that be adjusted downward?
Thanks. Repeat the question, I'm sorry.
Okay. If we fund it fully, as my colleague just suggested, when you come back to us in year 4, would you anticipate an ask of $600,000 or something less than that at that point?
At that point, it would go up a little bit. I've got the past application here. At that point, year 4 would be 819,000 is what we have proposed.
Projected.
And then year 5 would be 848,000. So the years post ARPA would go up about 200,000 a year, and only grow as the salaries, and salary increases and stuff went up. And at a point, we would have to refurbish the vehicles and stuff like that, and so that would be an ask every year.
Well, I support fully funding the original budget you submitted instead of this reduced one as well.
I'd like to make a comment that I really appreciate your work on this, because part of the issue on the funding, I think the supervision was a big one. I mean, and I think you've got to, just, if I understood what you explained, your current work at the moment, you have a sergeant in the city who's actually helping some now in some of the supervision currently in this model. We've had the discussion and the interest of the city's engagement, and they, not only have they been engaged, but the letter we received from the chief suggested that, yeah, this is something we are supportive. I think we got hung up on whether it's a interlocal agreement or not. And so I do think some of that supervision load can be helped with already the in-kind of the city of Winston-Salem, and I appreciate you, sort of making it very clear that Kernersville is very supportive and certainly wants to be a part, which also creates another part of capacity. So you've created something that I think is actually, I think, sensitive to the startup cost and it's also sensitive to the ability to sustain. So, I mean, I can't compliment you enough for doing that kind of work to take a look at it, because when all these projects run out, the ability for the county to pick up all of them is going to be a little, to pick up even a tenth of them will be very difficult. So this is something I think we hope shows success, and I think we've been fortunate. We've had some communications back with the person we spoke with about cure violence evaluation, about the possibility of them also being an evaluator on this project. And I think I know there's going to be a call, and I'm sure you will be invited, or anybody that you'd like to be invited to be on to talk about the part of it that gets evaluated and how do you demonstrate success, and what kind of record keeping. And that would not be a part of your cost to do that. That would be costs that we would bear to do the how do we figure out how well this is working. So I think there are a lot of good things, within that, and I think there's some details, and whether it's, I think I remember the very first time that this project was discussed. I mean, I think Dudley made a comment. We could probably, certainly whatever promise there's some opportunities in the budget. This is not like something off the shelf that you got to have this many pieces to make it work. This is something that's brand new. You're experimenting with a very small number now. This is a huge improvement on that to dedicate to officers, and I think you end up with a learning part. And quite frankly, we are going to have other rounds of ARPA funds. And if there was the need, there's a way to look at. We could certainly look at it after it's had a chance, to be successful. And that's exactly the point I made about some of the issues with cure violence. We need part of that's why a good evaluation with a comparison neighborhoods that maybe is a smaller project, and its start too. I mean, I think it's still important for us to try to maximize the benefit of the investment that we're making, and I appreciate your work on this and thinking about it.
Thanks, sir.
Rocky, I wanted to say that I sincerely appreciate the presentation as well. I'm gleaming from all of the comments from our commissioners, especially Commissioner Wisenhut, so thank you. I would agree too that I want to see this project successful, and I want to support it at its full funding request initially as well. What I would like you to do, just so, because we have people listening, for you to explain in 1 minute or less what this team is set up to do.
Okay, basically this team the makeshift team that we got up now is already in operation. And basically what they're doing now is we've got some young staff that are not dressing in normal police attire. And besides the investigative element, which is the biggest part of it, they're getting pretty close to some of the actors, and we're obtaining intelligence that we're running through our intelligence system, and most of it is compared with what Winston's got. They already had a big intel base before we started this. We do work hand in hand with them right now. We worked with them last night, again today. We've got initiatives going the rest of this week and through the weekend. And basically, we're through the intelligence we're gathering. Some of the people we're identifying, we've sort of created a a group of people that we're looking at real strongly and partnering with our federal partners to try to get the most violent offenders who have a lot of influence over these young men incarcerated as quickly as possible, if through either local or federal charges if we can. And then once that's achieved, we've already had a couple kids that wanted out, and we've introduced them to resources in the community where they were able to be bought out and not beaten out. And that's through some pastors and some of the local groups that you guys have already given some funding to. And what we're hoping to do is get in and intervene with the people that we can, get some help out. I think Antonio came in a couple weeks ago and talked about a kid with a gun. He called us, and we sent the JIT team out there to meet with them and take the gun and try to intervene with that family and keep them steering toward the gangs that they have out here in that community. But our hope is to intervene with who we can to get out and criminally take out the people that are committing the violence in Winston-Salem right now. They are, I would say, probably over 90% of the violence we're seeing is committed by gang members. We're using these guys sort of almost in an undercover role to identify as many of these actors as we can and try to take out the dangerous ones and try to help the younger ones before that they get into it. So it's not just a lock them all up mentality, but there is an element to that, because until we get some of the higher levels of the gang members off the streets, they're going to instill fear on the younger guys who are more afraid of them than they are us. And so that's the reason it's not 100%. We're not asking the schools for the money. It's not 100% a school initiative, because these guys are going to be working with the schools, but outside the schools as well and into the streets. And that's the reason we're partnering with Winston, is because the majority of the gangs are in the city. This team did assist the city with a homicide a few weeks ago that occurred inside the city, but the gang that did the homicide was from in the county, from Walkertown. It was the Gang Disciples, and it's a Caucasian gang, and all the shootings and all the violence was done by Caucasian people, but the violence was in the city, but there was also a drive-by and a house shot up out in the county. And since the homicide occurred in the city, we worked together on that one, but since it originated and the homicide was retaliation to the shooting in the county, then by us already working together and having that team together, we were able to resolve it very quickly, get the people arrested, because we already had our real-time intelligence centers working together, and we got that one pulled together pretty quick. And so they're already, the makeshift team we got now is already seen a lot of success, and this is just part-time. We had to pull a couple of them, to put back in the schools due to some shortages we have there with the COVID relief and stuff like that. But what this would do is just give us a full-time team that's dedicated, and with what we've been able to do with a 4-man part-time team, I think that we'll have no problem after the ARPA funds run out, showing you guys how much this team is needed. And I think that already you've seen in the places that we've been in, you've already seen a little bit of a reduction of violence. And after the initiative we started yesterday and through this weekend, I'm hoping that you're going to see more of an impact. And once we get our feet wet on that, then there'll probably be a whole lot more coming out about that. Right now, we're still a little covert with that till we get all the right people identified. We don't want to tip anybody off.
Good, Rocky. Thank you so very much.
Any further questions of Chief Deputy?
Just one question.
Yes, sir.
The gentleman you referred to as Antonio, is he commonly known as Tiny in the neighborhood? He's no longer Tiny,
Yes.
but he...
I was wanting to say Tiny. It took me a little while to think about Antonio. But
He's far from Tiny today, though.
He works with us a lot, and he's a great asset to the county.
Right. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ronnie. And I think, Kyle, just to, perhaps it sounds like we probably need an option A and an option B as we put that item together next Thursday, or for the introduction.
Absolutely, and we'll prepare that for the first briefing next week and the vote on March 3rd. The other ones on here, we felt like there was consensus amongst the board, but I'll run through them, and if there are any particular ones any board member would like to talk about, we can certainly discuss that. Greater Winston-Salem, Inc., Experiment Self-Reliance and SG Atkins, Imprint Cares, the Creative Center of North Carolina, Arts Council of Winston-Salem and Forsyth County, Memorial Industrial CDC, the Shalom Project, United Health Centers, Clemens Food Pantry, and Neighborhoods Hands. And then there's another category that we had, which are really applications that we had some conversation on, and we just need a little bit of further discussion. So the United Way Housing Matters and the Bethesda Center for the Homeless, we presented that last week. If you recall, the city has received some funds through housing and urban development that specifically are supposed to be used towards homelessness or prevention of homelessness. And so the staff's recommendation was to forward those on to the city as part of that process, and we can certainly bring them back to you after the city goes through their process. The Legal Aid of North Carolina, these were two that there was some discussion about. What we are going to propose doing is setting up some time to talk with the two applicants on this with the board, and so we'll schedule that for some further discussion. And then the last one was the Educational Attainment Sub-Initiative. Just speaking with the board, it sounds like there was some desire to hear or have staff go through those and review those again and present those to the board, given what we heard from the schools and their process. So if that pleases the board, we can do that as well. And then finally, just talking about next steps. So next week, we will have the first ARPA, or these ARPA items up for consideration for vote. Just to talk about what happens once the board approves this. If they are operational, staff will have authorization and the county manager to authorize a contract, enter a contract with organizations and move forward with that project. If they're capital, we'll be doing further evaluation, reaching out to the applicants, and then pending that review, bringing those back for final approval. I do want to mention the contract development is really it's going to be a different process for us. These are not going to be standard contracts that we do as a county. We're going to be working closely with these organizations, making sure we're following the federal guidance, detailing out what reporting they're going to need to be providing us, when, and what we expect. So I would say we hope the applicants will bear with us. We'll be working with them to try to get this, but this is not a normal process for us. It will be very intensive. And then as part of that, there will be some compliance training. We're working with outside experts to come in and provide compliance training, not only to the internal staff who will be working with the applicants on that compliance, but also members, or recipients as well, members of the staff of the applicants, to make sure that everyone understands what is expected of them. And the last thing I did want to mention was program evaluation. Like I mentioned, in these contracts, we are going to be very specific about what we need from these organizations, when they need to be reporting, what measures they need to be reporting. And so we will do that. We do that with our special appropriations, and this will be an intensive process. But I know there was some discussion as far as program evaluation and maybe a higher level of that, looking at the cure violence in the sheriff's program and bringing in outside entities. So we did want to just kind of ask the board if there was any idea about having some sort of more extensive program evaluation as part of all of these applications, or maybe specific ones. And just seeking some guidance from the board.
I think there may be some levels of that. I'm not sure all of them require the same kind of, I mean, it's not a one-size-fits-all in the evaluation models in terms of what we're looking for.
Yeah, and I would add one thing that we are in the process of doing is, some of them will have departmental liaisons. So, there are some of the recipients that already work closely with a department anyway. And so we're going to have some program, we'll identify that, add some program liaisons in there that can help us make sure that the work that's being done through the grant recipients and the work of the regular department is coordinated. And so I think that'll make us better both internally and it'll help the applicants out. So that will be part of it. I think what I'm hearing is, because I've heard some kind of hallway conversations about it, is that that we do need, we know we've got several projects that we clearly need outside experts in to do program evaluation. And I think from the staff perspective, perhaps we'll brainstorm a bit about what level can be done for certain applicants in-house. With in-house staff, budget management does that all the time kind of anyway, on a level, particularly with departments, and then maybe look to some other evaluation strategies where we think it's needed. So we'll keep working on that.
Mr. Chairman, I have two quick questions. Is it time for questions? Okay. Remind me, Kyle, do we have about $27 million left from this first allocation after we make these decisions?
I believe that was my number. I'll have to go back and double check that, but yes, sir, I believe that was it.
The ballpark.
With the ones that are owned for approval this week, they were about $11 million, a little bit north of that. So I can get that number for the presentation next week.
And the dashboard will be updated after we make our decisions next week,
Yeah.
more or less?
Yes, sir, yes. We had been waiting to put that online until we had actually had the approvals. As soon as those are approved, we'll be updating that and putting that online so everyone can see.
Okay. And I said two, but I meant three. Our 80% goal that we had sort of agreed to in terms of, qualified census tracts, are we still approaching that or in the ballpark?
Yes, sir. So, we talked about this a little bit last week, and it's still the same. So it will be 100% of the applications you are approving are either working in a qualified census tract or working with organizations who are working with disproportionately impacted communities.
Thank you very much, Kyle.
Yes, sir. Happy to answer any other questions.
That's good. Thank you.
All righty. Well, that is it for the briefing. I just had the closed session motion unless there's any discussion by board members.
Could I have a point of privilege for just 1 second, Mr. Chairman? Since we won't be here for Valentine's Day, I wanted to wish everybody happy Valentine's, especially my mother. And beyond that, this is a celebration of Black History Month. So I just want to raise up a few people who got me to where I'm at today, namely Commissioner Buford Bailey, Commissioner Maisie Woodruff, Commissioner Walter Marshall, and of course, Commissioner Erling Palmer, and the average citizens who had the confidence in me to put me into this position. Thank you very much, and I hope the county will have some form of celebration for all of us. Maybe put some more diversity on our back wall back there one day. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Want to go with the closing?
All right. Anything else? All right. Need to ask the board to consider a motion to go into closed session to discuss three matters to establish or to instruct the public body staff or negotiating agents concerning the position to be taken by or on behalf of the public body in negotiating the price and other material terms of a contract or proposed contract for the acquisition of real property by purchase, option, exchange, or lease pursuant to provisions of North Carolina General Statute 143, 1311A5. And since there's no other business come before the board at this meeting following the closed session, the meeting will be adjourned.
Motion by Commissioner Kaplan. I'll second the motion. We're adjourned.